We're going to have Tom and John talk about weather and power. So Tom, it's all yours. Take it away.
All right, thanks everybody. Tom Frieders, I'm the warning coordination meteorologist with National Weather Service here in Phoenix, and I got in at noon today at the conference. And I know several of you have probably been in the room, a nice air-conditioned room since 9 a.m. So as a meteorologist, my expert opinion out there and analysis, it's still hot. But seriously, last year, we had 55 days total above 110 degrees officially here in Phoenix. And as of today, we're going to exceed 110 for this year, and that's going to break last year's record of 56 days, and we still have some more to come. Another record, we're at day 102 of consecutive days of above 100 degrees. So, in all seriousness, this excessive heat that we experience here, we all know we live in a desert, we live in a hot climate, so that the ability to get people to respond is, one of probably the most difficult part of the job down in here when you're talking about heat. So I'm going to talk a little bit, first off, about our agency. We're a federal agency with the National Weather Service. We're under NOAA, and we have 168 units in the Weather Service across the country. That includes 120 local National Weather Service offices, just like the one we have in Phoenix here. We issue over 1.5 million forecasts annually with over 50,000 warnings for the protection of life and property. And on average, as a taxpayer, that's only costing you about $4 a year. But you think about that, that's not a lot of money when you think about all the technology that goes into play with the National Weather Service, fielding modeling and stuff to help us get the forecast out to you for hazardous weather, the satellite imagery, the radar imagery that you see on a daily basis. All that comes from our agency. So $4 a year is really pretty good the way I look at it. Our mission in the National Weather Service is to issue watches, warnings for the protection of life and property. So that's our main mission. Our vision is to become a weather-ready nation, making sure our communities are ready, responsive, and resilient to hazardous weather. Because extreme weather, we hear the term climate change all the time. Yes, climate is changing. The temperatures are warming in many areas, most areas, but we're anticipating an increase in extreme weather events. And that can mean, it means different things for different areas of the globe, but certainly that means more extreme heat waves, extended heat waves, more extreme droughts. We can have heavy rainfall events, maybe more few and far between, but when they do occur, they're going to be more extreme, more dangerous, and that's what it means for climate change and being ready for those extreme weather events. And they're becoming more frequent. And this is all, these numbers here are adjusted for inflation, but they're billion-dollar disasters. So if you start in the middle there, the decade up through 2009, we were seeing about a little over $6 billion disasters across the nation a year. Then it went up to 12.8 per year in the next decade. And then just in 2020 through 2022, we saw 20 per year, and then last year on the top there, we saw $28 billion disasters across the region, and that you're not even seeing anything down here in the Southwest, and so heat again is another one of those disasters is difficult to recognize. You see a tornado roll through an area, bang, you automatically see the damage that occurred. Winter storm affects the north. You can see the impacts from the heavy snow and accidents and things like that. What's your house look like one day before a heat wave, 10 days after a heat wave? It looks the same. So it's not as visible, and that's what becomes challenging when it comes to the heat part of things. But weather-related deaths, we have plenty across Arizona. We are not immune to weather disasters. And in this graph, I took out heat because that heat is the #1 killer, and we're seeing record level of heat fatalities every year now. But you can see, flood is the next one. Flash flooding with the monsoon season can be an impact, down to wildfires and lightning, and then some in the dust storm. And we do see some cold conditions, especially in the northern higher elevations of Arizona, and also with the damaging winds that we occur. But then if you factor in the heat, that puts everything in perspective there. And this doesn't include years after 2020, which we've continually experienced, again, record fatalities. But just in the 2010 to 2020 decade, you can see how that just dwarfs everything else there when it comes to weather disasters. But yeah, we have plenty of disasters in Arizona for sure, and these are all the types of weather conditions that we're always monitoring. You think of Arizona, hey, you're pretty quiet down there, right? Not the case. It seems like every week we're monitoring some kind of impactful weather across the area, believe it or not, especially at this time of the year when you're talking about heat and monsoon and things like that. But it begins with winter storms. High elevation snows can shut down roads and cause hazardous conditions. Strong winds, not associated with thunderstorms, just strong winds can occur, and heavy rainfall and flooding with these winter storms that come in the lower elevations. Then we have fire weather conditions in the spring when we get those real hot, dry, windy conditions, especially if we haven't had a winter of much precipitation. Now you're experiencing dry brush conditions out there. These hot, dry, windy conditions develop. And any kind of spark, now you have a rapidly evolving wildfire that's impacting structures and human life there too. And also, it doesn't even include the air quality issues. We've had some really serious air quality issues in the valley here in the past when we've had nearby wildfires. Some of the recent conditions, maybe like last year out in New York when we had a lot of Canadian fires, you saw a lot of news reports on the poor air quality up in that area. And then excessive heat, I've talked about this. #1 weather-related killer in the country. Obviously, record heat deaths we keep hearing, and Jennifer talked about that a little bit already, but it's just, a constant battle with dealing with this excessive heat that's increasing year to year. Drought conditions, water supplies, always a concern. And then at this time of year too, monsoon thunderstorms that produce lightning, damaging winds, flash flooding, and dust storms, which all can be critical as well. But we're, our operations center, again, our mission is to provide weather, water, and climate information for the protection of life and property. But we don't have enough resources to be the boots on the ground, and so our partnerships are really critical. For instance, heat, I think it was just, a couple weeks ago, Jennifer, we met with Jennifer with GHS, and we were talking about some heat messaging and things like that. We meet twice a month at this time of the year in large groups of well-collaborated partnerships in the heat messaging. So we need the partners. We're the ones providing the information of what is the heat doing? How long is it going to last? How intense is it going to be? But we need those partnerships to go to the next level and be the boots on the ground to protect lives and property. So these are all the types of partnerships we have. It's a year-round effort. And, and I'm kind of setting the stage for John with SRP and how the utilities respond to these disasters for the protection of lives and property as well. So first off, the heat. This is a graph just goes through 2020 here on the summer temperature trends. And basically we're looking at about 0.6 degree increase per decade for our summertime temperatures. This is Phoenix specific. And you can just see that significant increase there. 0.6 degrees doesn't sound like a lot, but that adds up pretty quickly over time. And on that lower right chart, we're seeing less cold conditions and longer, more intense heat. So I don't know, I haven't looked it up, but I think I'd love to report that, next week we're going to see a record low temperature. But we're just, I think you have to go well into the 1990s past there that we saw our last record low temperature. So pretty, we're just really stuck in the heat here. And then it's those overnight low temperatures providing little relief. Just in the afternoon sessions here, we've talked about vulnerable communities being susceptible to the heat. It's that overnight low temperatures that are not providing any relief for those that don't have adequate cooling and hydration and things like that. Thanks to our Arizona Climate Office here, this is a plot of 90-degree plus low temperatures. Just, in the last 2 years, driving into work at 5:30 in the morning, and your temperature on the car is reading 95, 94 degrees, that's just brutal. Having those temperatures that high at the lowest time of the day. We tell people to get out, do your outdoor activities, exercise, hike in the coolest time of the day in those morning hours. But when you're out there at 94, 95 degrees already at 5:30 in the morning, that gets to be tough to do. So yeah, it's challenging to provide that messaging on what people should do. But you can see those numbers increasing. This year, we also broke a record of a number of low temperatures that were above 90 degrees. We broke last year's record from that. So just continues with the heat. So this is the summary of last year. First off, record high. Our summer in meteorology, we talk about June, July, and August. We just choose those 3 months. But our average temperature was 97 degrees last year. That was a record by several degrees over 2020. We had at one point 31 consecutive days above 110, which was a record. And those middle charts are accumulated days. The top one is the high temperatures above 110. The bottom is the low temperatures above 90. The red line was the current year of last year compared to, you see all the lumping below on those charts where most years are. But then you see the red line was last year, how it just was a abnormally way out of ordinary year for those records. The other dark gray line up there was 2020. So everybody probably remembers 2020. So, we were dealing with that. The impacts are significant. Just to bring in some impacts, this is just some numbers from Maricopa County. The chart there on the left there is heat illnesses. You can see some spikes. There was definitely difference between the heat last year and this year. There were some spikes of upwards of 150 illnesses per day. When we hit that real intense heat last July, we had a couple, I think 5-6 day stretches in a row where we had temperatures above 115. We had, I think, 6 days total of highs of 118 and 119. This year we only saw 2 118s only, but compared to last year, it was much more intense heat centered around July, which I know stressed a lot of the health systems across the valley when we hit that. And then obviously the record number of fatalities, again, unfortunately, was an increase in 50%. I think I checked this morning so far that, the ones they're investigating is a little bit lower than last year, but again, like I said, to start off, it's still hot out there, so there's still going to be impacts. We thought, well, we'll get a couple years break at least, right? Because these are abnormally high years. Well, this year comes out, and bang, we broke last year's record. 98.9 degrees was our average temperature for the summer, which almost we broke last year's record again by almost 2 degrees. And then there's those accumulation charts there again, which shows us at record levels. That top chart, if I updated it now today, that would be a record. So just keeps going. So I have 32 years experience in the National Weather Service. I've worked in the Midwest to the Northern Rockies, and then just in the last 3 years, I've been down in Phoenix. And this is, out of any kind of weather, this is the most challenging, heat's the most challenging weather phenomena to message. How do you get people to be ready, responsive, and resilient to heat? So it is very challenging, and again, those partnerships is what's crucial. But how, one of the messaging tools we use is called heat risk. If you're used to some of the old terminology, especially out in here in Arizona, we used to use heat index. Now we use a heat risk. But if you go out east, or some of you from out east, they still use a heat index, which is a temperature comparison with humidity and what it feels like out there. So the heat index is always higher than the temperature. Well, out west here, we don't have the humidity, so we developed a different tool called heat risk, which is basically an indication of how unusual the heat is for the time of year, how prolonged the heat is, what are the low temperatures, are you getting any overnight relief from that? And then we link that to a simulated CDC impacts like fatalities and illnesses with heat. And we've developed this chart that has different heat risk levels from 0 being nothing all the way up to 4, magenta being extreme. And it's those, when we do have all those conditions come together, we start to get in that red and magenta, the 3 and 4 levels. Those are the most major heat conditions. And so today we're in that 3 category, which is major. So we have an excessive heat warning out. So anytime we start to, it's shown on this graph, and you can, or this plot there of the state of Arizona there, you can see in the background, and you can get that off of our website. But all those, today we're in the red, so we have excessive heat warning. So anytime we're in that 3 to 4 category, this is heat that impacts every one of us. Jennifer talked about that too. It's not just the tourists coming in that are not used to the heat. When you get to these kind of heat levels, that heat is impacting all of us. And so that's where we focus our excessive heat warning. So we're trying to gauge that balance of not issuing too many warnings because we're always hot versus not enough. We get complaints both directions. How come there's not a warning out? Why do you have a warning out? It's hot. We're in Phoenix. And so we try to balance that a little bit. But we work closely with all of our partners to understand this risk here. And so when we get into those top categories, that's when you start to hear about our excessive heat warnings. Hopefully people respond to that and avoid doing too much strenuous activity. A lot of the city parks and recreation areas close down during our warnings just to protect people and protect from search and rescue operations having to go out when people are out hiking in those conditions. So that's the big impact, the heat. But obviously there's other impacts. Again, I talked about fire weather. Get a combination of those dry, windy, and hot conditions just increases the fire risk. You spark any kind of wildfire and then it burns rapid. We see some rapid burning and the poor air quality that goes along with it. We work closely with Department of Environmental Quality in Arizona too to help them push out air quality alerts. When you see those air quality alerts, we also help try to publish that information for them to get the message out. Dust storms, significant impact here in the monsoon season. You get thunderstorms develop. You got really hot, dry conditions out there. Like today, you step outside, it's real hot and dry. If you were to get a thunderstorm develop, that moisture high up, 10,000 feet up in the atmosphere produces rain, but a lot of it evaporates before it hits the ground. That produces some cold air, 10,000 feet up in the atmosphere. Cold air is more dense than hot air, and it just slams to the ground, and that produces those winds. These can evolve real rapidly, but can produce damage similar to tornadoes. And unfortunately, this past summer, we had some significant damage roll through west side of Phoenix where we had a fatality from a warehouse that got destroyed by these downburst winds that come out of these thunderstorms. That could be a huge impact and with the downburst winds, but the blowing dust too for travel conditions, low visibility becomes very dangerous. I-10 corridor, especially between here and Tucson, can be real vulnerable. There was one in Illinois, actually, that had several fatalities and injuries from a dust storm recently. Lightning kills a couple dozen people a year across the United States. Can be a preventable fatality, just being cautious of the whenever thunderstorms are out and about. A lot of times people wait to take shelter until you actually get wet, start getting wet from rain and that. But a lot of times out here, you're waiting too long then. If you wait for the actual rain to occur, you're not giving yourself enough time to take shelter. So definitely see fatalities every year. Try not to be the tallest object. Get into an enclosed shelter to avoid the impacts of lightning. And there's an example there with some lightning strike near Coors Field out for the Denver Rockies. So, that's how close those impacts from lightning can be. And then this is the downburst I already kind of talked about, but you see the impacts with the downed trees, power lines. John will go into this with the impacts that they have from the power lines. We cause a lot of headaches for you guys during the monsoon season. So, so he'll talk about that and how to respond and keep that power going. And then flash floods, number one weather-related killer with thunderstorms. So heat, if anything, dealing with any weather phenomena, but for thunderstorms, flash flooding can be the most serious life-threatening condition. These develop real quickly. You don't even have to have rain where the flash flood occurs. It can be down upstream somewhere, and the floods rush downstream and flow over what we call a lot of low water crossings. You get in rural areas, you see the roads doing this kind of thing, up and down. Usually dry, but you get these strong thunderstorms, and now all of a sudden you got flash floods. So getting our information, we have a website, weather.gov is our federal agency's website. If you click on your local area, so let's say you click on Phoenix, then you get to our local website where we have graphics and things like that talking about hazardous weather over the next 7 days or so. We are the sole provider of watches and warnings. A watch is kind of that heads up. A warning is when we want people to act quickly. That's when conditions are already occurring or imminent. So you get those severe thunderstorm warnings for downbursts. Again, those can cause similar damage to tornadoes, so definitely need to be taken seriously. We're on social media, Facebook, Twitter, or X, however you want to call it. Figure out a way how you're going to get alerts. There's various apps out there. FEMA has an app. Red Cross has an app. We don't actually have an alerting app in our agency, so you'd have to find one that works for you. I know there's a lot of media folks that have those too. And then if you gotten those special alerts on your smartphones before for like dust storms, flash floods, those you're already signed up for the most serious type weather conditions, unless you get under your settings and turn off government alerts. But those will automatically give your phone a unique vibration and alert for the most serious weather conditions. And then being the Weather Service, I'll just put out an outlook there, kind of off the course of the topic here, but everybody always wants, well, what's the winter going to be like since we're in the Weather Service? These are 3-month outlooks, so you start on the left there, August, September, October, November, and then all the way into the winter months, all the way to the right. But the temperature trends are on the top and the precipitation trends are on the bottom. And unfortunately, we've been talking about heat, and all those red shades across Arizona, southwest U.S. are trends toward above normal temperatures all the way into the winter, and below normal precipitation chances all the way through the winter. So kind of what you see is what you get for the most part, what we're anticipating for this upcoming winter. Hopefully we'll see some wet storms and some cool conditions into the winter months. And then finally, we're always looking for ambassadors to help get our message out there about severe weather, promote weather safety and things like that. You and your organizations can become a Weather Ready ambassador by signing up for this. It's just a matter of saying you're going to promote National Weather Service safety messaging. So there's that website down there. You can just Google Weather Ready ambassadors. So with that, that's all I have. I guess I'll turn it over to John here then.
I want to ask you a question though,
Yeah.
Tom. So I was doing some work in San Francisco, and I sent an email to the city's emergency manager. She wasn't really quickly responsive. She finally got back to me. She apologized. She said she was in the midst of a public health weather emergency. They were dealing with 93 degrees in San Francisco. So a different climate, but then I said to her, 93 degrees, we're at like 113 plus every day. And she said, well, I hope you don't remember this summer as the coolest summer of the rest of our lives.
Yeah.
Is there any relevance to that statement, or is that just somebody in San Francisco giving me a hard time?
Well, and you saw some of the charts I showed. The trend is upwards. Now you're going to have some up and downs, but definitely the trend is upward, and so you're going to see more of those extreme heat conditions, hotter summers, and things like that. And it kind of shows that, and they probably had an excessive heat warning out for 93 degrees. For us here, 93 is a everyday occurrence. So.
If we give you some Copa cookies, is there anything you can do about this?
I wish I had control. I probably wouldn't be standing here right now if I had control of the weather. So.
Let's give Tom Frieders a big hand. So talk about perseverance and patience. One of the first people here today was John Padilla. I was amazed that he knew that he was going to be here this afternoon, but he was here long before the session even started this morning. And knowing John a little bit and working with him through the years when he was out at the nuclear power plant and now in his role with SRP, I think, John, you want to know your customers. And that's one of the reasons that you're here. So take it away and let's bring this session home.
Yeah, thank you. Good afternoon. I'm John Padilla. I'm the emergency manager for Salt River Project, and I want to thank you all for being here at the end of the day. I'm telling myself it's because you really wanted to hear about weather and power, but it's probably really because you don't want to go back to the office, and I'm okay with that. But we'll try to get you out of here so you can beat the traffic. And, okay, I'm doing this without, all right, that'll work. So, the lights are on.
Are you kidding me? The power goes out? Did you hit a button there? I don't know.
No,
Hold on, our tech team's on it in the back.
tech team's on it.
Again, the irony.
Yeah. While they're bringing that up, I had my agenda up there, things we were going to talk about. And after sitting here all day, it's like, yeah, I'm going to talk about all those things, but it's really about operational resilience. So I'll go to the agenda. You see, just put operational resilience over that. I'll talk a little bit about what we do at SRP for operational resilience to make sure we can provide you power. And then talk a little bit about what you can do at your organization and at home as well, individually, to have that resilience as well. So let's set a little bit. This is what we deal with every day. So starting in the upper left there, you can see those are generating stations. That's where the power comes from. And you can see up there's coal, there's nuclear, and there's gas. Those are our baseload plants. That's what provides the vast majority of the power every day. And then in the summer, when we need additional, sorry, I'm not used to karaoke. When we need additional power, we use what we call peaking plants. And that's generally gas, hydro, and our renewables. So that's where the power starts from. Then we send it to a transformer. We step it up to 500,000 to 230,000 volts. We send it down the line to substations, and then we step it down to about 69,000 volts. So that portion right there, that's what's known as the grid. So if you hear people talking about the grid across the US, that's what they're talking about, that transmission system up to 69,000 volts. Once we get it to the transformers at the end of that 69,000 volts, we'll step it down to 12,000 volts, and that'll go to the substations that you see out in the neighborhoods, that's in your areas. And then we'll send it to our distribution system, which is 12,000 volts. That'll go to your homes and businesses. And you can see up there the number of miles of transmission that each one of the utilities has here in the state, both transmission and distribution, and the total number of customers there at the end. So just to kind of let you know, that's what the system looks like. So if people are talking about the grid, that's what they're talking about. So the bulk power system is the grid across the US here. And you can see it's broken up into 4 areas. They do go up into Canada. So we can share power with the Canadians, not so much with the people in Quebec. There's not quite of an in-tie there, or the people down in Texas. They're kind of on their own down there, so we share a little bit with them. But between west and east, we can share power across the entire country, which really helps us out a lot. We can share a little bit with Mexico. On the California side, I know APS has a tie down in there, and the California Utilities, San Diego Gas and Electric, also has a tie down in there, so we can share with them a little bit as well. Here in the state of Arizona, you can see all of the power companies that we have here. Obviously, APS is the largest. They have the largest territory and the largest number of customers. And they hit their peak on August 4th, thanks to our friends at the National Weather Service, 8,212 megawatts. So it's 8,212 million watts of power. 1 megawatt can power 720 homes. So that's a lot of power. You can see SRP there. We're kind of the heart of the state, I like to say. We're kind of in the pink there in the middle. And we also hit our peak on August 4th, and that was 8,219 megawatts. And we'll talk a little bit more about the trend we're seeing for that. And then down south, we have Tucson Electric Power, and they provide power to Tucson. And they hit their peak in 2021. That was their peak demand. So I don't know if it's the Tucson National Weather Service office is, better at cooling it down there, or they just don't have the infrastructure that we're seeing up here in the valley. Okay, so let's talk about the causes of outages here in the state. Number one is why we are really good friends with the National Weather Service, why they reside in our building, why I can just walk down the hall and go down to the National Weather Service office and knock on the door and the little window opens and I give them the password and they let me come in and we talk about the weather. That's the biggest thing that causes outages here in the state. They're weather-related events. Then we get into underground cable failures. We'll generally see that 2 or 3 days after the monsoon rains when the water gets down to the cables. Other equipment failures, it's just equipment, it breaks. And that happens occasionally. Automobile accidents. I need to talk to our guys who go out and put the poles up, the wooden poles and the metal poles, and have them take those magnets out of those, because wherever there's an accident, that car could be 90 degrees from that pole and it will be stuck to it. Never fails. So that's our fourth cause of accidents. And then lastly, are transmission accidents. So those are things that happen on the transmission system that are not part of our transmission system that we share power with that impact us. They're the fifth reason that we have. So you can see fiscal year 23 data up here. We had 1.14 outages per year. And that includes all the storm events. So likely you'll have about 1 outage per year. APS is about the same. And our average duration was about 83 minutes. Now we worked to get that down, but again, we've had a lot of storms last year in fiscal year 23. So we built all that into. So overall, it's a pretty reliable system. You'll probably see 1 outage per year, 83 minutes or less. So let's talk about heat. And you see, Tom was talking about heat. His trend line is like our trend line there. Heat is only going to continue to increase as we move forward. So what does that cause? That causes an increased demand for electricity. And you can see there on the left-hand side, 8 years ago, our peak demand was about 6,200 megawatts. Now we're at 8,200 megawatts. And by 2035, we expect a 50% increase in electric power demand just for SRP. And APS is about the same way. So residential is causing it. More people are moving to the valley. Chip manufacturing, data centers, AI centers, they all need a lot of power. So that's where the increased demand is coming from. So if we have an increased demand, we have an increased need for generation, so we can make more power. As it gets hotter, we'll see an increase in the decrease of performance of the generators, are about 4.5% that we have to plan for. So they're going to be 4.5% less efficient. So as we build in additional gas generation, we're also building in hydro. We're looking at plans to build pump back facilities up at Roosevelt Lake and Canyon Lake, where we'll actually create artificial reservoirs up there in the mountains. And we'll pump water up there during the night when it's cheap. And then we'll run that water back down through the turbines during the day, during the peak, so we can have power. And that's one of the ways we're looking at renewable energy. So we have to get that power to all of our customers. So that's the updating the grid you see down there at the bottom. With the heat, we see about a 1% to 2% loss and efficiency at our substations and also at our transmission lines. So we have to build that into our projections going forward. And we anticipate at this point we'd have to build approximately 380 additional miles of transmission line to hook up to the increased generation, and about 12 new transformers to go with that. So we're looking at building a bigger grid as we move forward. Okay, so how do we use the operational resilience to protect the grid? First thing we do is rotating outages, and we call these curtailments, sorry. Voluntary curtailments, where we ask you to shed power, and involuntary curtailments, where we do it for you. And what we do is we need to maintain 60 megahertz across the system to keep that grid going. That's our primary concern. So if we need to start shedding load or cutting power to customers, we'll start and rotate through all of our circuits. It's about 20 to 30 minutes, and then it'll move on to the next circuit. So we don't shut down large portions. It goes across our entire service area. APS does the same thing, so does TEP, excuse me. And that's how we maintain and protect the grid. Public safety power shutoffs. Tom was talking about wildland fires. We do not want to start a wildland fire with one of our transmission lines. So what we do is we look at the environmental conditions around those lines. Currently, we've got two areas. One is Tonto Basin in Roosevelt, and the other one is Rio Verde here in Maricopa County. And we're looking at hardening those areas so we don't have to do this, which is a voluntary shutdown of that transmission line to prevent wildfires. And it is the last resort for us to shut down a power line. We don't like to do it. There are certain conditions it has to be: very dry, very hot, and very windy. And if there's any type of moisture in the air, then we don't have to do this. It doesn't meet the criteria. So this is one way to protect the grid. Another way is maintenance. We are continually maintaining the system. During the summer, just prior to the summer, we'll go out and do replacements of our bushings, which are those little things where the wires connect up to the equipment. You can see there in that center photo, one of our subtechs is out there doing inspections. Just behind him, the little black things on the top there, those are bushings. That's how we connect to the power line. So we'll do infrared camera scans of those to make sure they're working okay. We do underground cable replacement. We do preventative maintenance and vegetation maintenance to keep all the trees and stuff out of the line during monsoon storms. Additional preparations, you can see physical security and cybersecurity there. So we have increased ballistic protection around our critical substations to make sure nobody's going to put holes in anything out there. We also have 3 departments at SRP that do nothing but cybersecurity and computer security. We have spare transformers on hand because we replace about 2,200 transformers every year due to them going out. We have large transformers. You can see there they are on low buoys, so we can take them out if we lose a substation. And then inspections of those transmission miles, and they do not de-energize those lines for those guys that are out there on the helicopters doing those inspections. So those are fully energized lines. Okay, any questions about SRP and the power system? No? Okay, we're gonna shift gears a little bit here, talk about preparedness. And this is probably the most critical tool in your preparedness toolbox. And this is a preparedness mindset. So this is a proactive, people-focused mindset. And it's that you have the foresight to have a plan in place. You've probably heard that a lot today. That you have the ability to locate and secure critical resources that you're going to need, and the agility, mobility, and flexibility to implement that plan. And then once you implement that plan, be able to adjust to the situation, because it's always going to be changing. You can plan for all this stuff, but it's always going to get different. Hopefully it's getting better, not worse. So what does that give you? Stress reduction, because you have that plan in place, you know what you're going to do when the event comes up. Self-confidence that you're prepared to respond to that. Personal growth because you've been training to that plan. And a sense of control because you know what to do when that event occurs. So planning, we've been talking about planning all day. Everybody got up and started planning. So being at the end of the day, it's kind of nice because I can just kind of summarize and wrap up the theme we've had going all day about planning. And the biggest thing I want to say about planning is there are resources out there for you. So reach out to your local, your city, your tribal, your county, your state emergency management organizations. You just go online and Google them, and they will come out and help you write your plans. They'll probably even have blank copies they can just give to you so they can adjust them so you can get those plans in place. If you're uncomfortable doing that, my contact information is at the end of the presentation. Let me know, I'll help you write your plans. And again, the plans just tell you, what are we going to do? We identify our priorities. We identify our critical functions. We identify our critical employees, make sure that they have all the resources that they need to respond to that incident. If we have off-site facilities, backup facilities, where those are at. Employees, probably the biggest key in the machine here. They're the ones that get everything done, but they need to know what to do. They need to know what their roles are in the emergency. They need to know how they're going to be warned, how they're going to be alerted, how you're going to communicate when your communication systems are down. They need to be educated. They need to know what to do in an evacuation, what to do in a shelter in place. And there's different types of shelters in place, right? You could have a police situation where you're going to lock down, or you could have a hazardous material event outside that you have to respond to, so make sure they're trained on that. And then if you have employees that have any access or functional needs, make sure you plan for them as well so they can continue to contribute. Customers. If your customers are on site during the event, have you planned for what you're going to do to support them? And if your customers are your residents, have you planned, like John did, to make sure that you're ready to provide all the services they're going to need to get through that emergency? And equipment, not only, this talks about electrical equipment for obvious reasons, but any critical equipment you're going to need. Make a list of it, where it's at. Have a diagram, test your equipment, test your communications equipment, make sure it works. We just did a communications drill up at Roosevelt Dam and Horse Mesa Dam on Tuesday, and they went out and tested their satellite phones on Monday. Worked fine, got all the communications. We did the drill on Tuesday morning. None of them worked. So make sure you test that, because you never know when it's not going to work, and make sure you have that backup like your N1 and N2 systems. Let's see. Know the location of each utility shutoff and how to use it. Have a floor plan where those are located at. And then lastly, down at the bottom, know who your strategic energy manager, that's what we call them at SRP, know who that is that works with your organization. They are key account managers at APS. And if you just give us a call, we can tell you who they are for your facilities. Medical equipment, that's interesting. And you guys know this, if you have specialized medical equipment that requires power to operate, make sure you have a backup or you have additional ones on hand. Preventative measures. We'll talk a little bit about generators in the next slide, but if you need a generator, get an engineer out, take a look to see what kind of load you need, what you're going to power. And if you're going to power the entire building, make sure that you test that generator, it's at the right load, and you test it on that load so it runs what it's supposed to run. Learn how to replace blown fuses, circuit breakers, both at your office and at home. And when you're doing that, please do it safely. Wear eye protection and gloves to make sure that nothing happens there. And your critical equipment, plug it into surge protectors so you're protecting that as well. Here we are, backup power, portable generators. If you have a portable generator, use it outside. Make sure it's the right size. Use extension cords and plug in just what you want to run on it. And never connect it to your building's wiring unless you have an electrician do that.
Hey, John, what about a whole house surge protector? People advertise them, they're third party. Is it worth it? I did one, up.
Do you think it's worth it? Obviously you do, you got one.
I got one. I was influenced to get one. But it was $400, and is it something that we should protect our homes with?
Absolutely. Well, it gives you peace of mind, right? And all your electronic equipment in your home and your appliances are protected from that surge. And it may be from a lightning strike that causes that surge, or it may be a surge when we turn the power back on, that comes down the line. It's just that added measure of protection. So if you can do it, and it makes you feel comfortable, absolutely. Yeah. Exercises and training. You have to train your plans to make sure people know what to do. And the best thing about exercising is once you get everybody trained, most of them will move on and you'll have to start all over again. So it's kind of an endless cycle, but it is definitely worth it. And again, reaching out to your emergency management agency. They will come out, they love to do exercises. They'll come out and do exercises with you. They'll invite the Red Cross, they'll invite the fire department, they'll invite PD. They'll get everybody, all your community partners together so you can talk about how you're going to respond, so everybody knows what they're going to do during that emergency. And again, the Arizona Emergency Management Association is having a conference September 25th and 26th. That's all the local state emergency managers. So if you just go online to Arizona Emergency Management Association, you can see that conference. You can go out and meet all the emergency managers that can help you with this. And the Association of Continuity Professionals, who has a chapter here, are all businesses. So those are all the business continuity people from Boeing and Dick's Sporting Goods and SRP and American Express, all the large corporations. That's where you meet all those business continuity people, and they are great resources for the same reason. And John, I'm just going to piggyback off what you said earlier about basic outage supplies. You know, don't only have these at home and in your car for severe weather. Think about having them in your office for your employees. You know, because the lights will go out there. So we'll talk a little bit about flashlights, but find the most inconvenient place in your house or in your business where you would be when the lights go out and put a flashlight there. So when the lights do go out, you've got it. But just think about all these things. And if you have staff, do you provide them for them? Again, preventative measures. Tom talked a little bit about apps. Have the app on your phone so you can get information. Have all your critical contact numbers either in your phone or written down on a piece of paper. I do that as well because it works when the power's out. And talked about flashlights. Oh, and if you have garage doors, make sure you know how to open them manually. And John, great point about knowing what your doors do when the power goes out. Do they lock open? Do they lock closed? How do you manually manipulate those doors? If you have a secure facility, do you have to put a guard on those doors? So just things to keep in mind. And lastly, what you do during a power outage, go to your plan. Go to your plan, see what it says, start those procedures to go to those backup systems to make sure you can continue those critical functions. If you're at home, go outside if it's safe. Look around the neighborhood, see if everybody else lost their power too. Check your circuit breakers, see if it's not just your house. And then if you haven't heard anything about it from the website or it, give us a call. Because a lot of times we don't know that the power's gone out there, so call us and let us know, both at SRP, APS, and TEP. See that in the middle? And you can turn off all your major appliances so there's not that strain when they come back on. We talked about that surge protector, giving you that additional protection. But if the equipment's off when the power comes back on, you're not going to see a damaging impact to it. And you can leave one light on so that you know when the power has come back on. Okay, food safety during a disaster emergency. This is both for at your home, but also if you have a large facility where you have a dining facility and you're providing food to your residents or your employees, this should definitely be in your business continuity plan. And the refrigerator will keep your food cold for about 4 hours and about 48 hours if your freezer's full. All right. Medical programs. So all the utilities in state have medical programs, and they're probably not what you think they are. These will provide you advance notice if you have medical equipment in your home that you need if there's going to be a scheduled power outage. You don't get advance notice of the storms. We'd like to give it to you, but we don't know when the power is going to go out. So these are only for scheduled power outages, so you can decide, can I stay at home? You know, we'll give you an estimate of how long the power is going to be. During the summer, we will not schedule outages longer than 4 hours. So if we need to do maintenance and it's going to be longer than 4 hours, we'll push that off until the fall. But we'll let you know this if you signed up for the program, when those outages are going to be. Social media. Just like the Weather Service, just like Jennifer was saying, social media is a great place to get information. All of the utilities have outage maps, and you can look and see where the power's out. We'll give you an estimate of when the power is going to return. And one new thing we added this year, Jennifer, is a link to the ADHS Cooling Center map. So if you're going to see where the power's out on both APS and SRP, you can hit a link and go to her map, Jennifer's map, to show you where the nearest cooling centers are. And we're talking right now with our GIS department to see if we can build into that outage map. If you're in an area that has an outage map, it'll also pull up that information and tell you where the closest cooling center is, what its hours of operation are, and all that data, so it'll all be there in one place. So that's one thing we'd really like to work with our partners at ADHS and Maricopa County Department of Public Health to make sure we get that information out there in the event of an outage in the summer. Questions? Yes, sir.
Come on, Jamie. I want everybody to hear your question.
Thanks,
Thanks a lot. Appreciate it. Let's see what happens.
Maybe it's you.
For your emergency, for the medical program, to sign up, would that also include the power outages that could be due to wildland fires? Would that be also associated with that, or is that a whole different program?
Since that is a planned outage, it should be, yes. We've never had to do a public safety power shutoff yet, so we're still kind of working that out. But since it is a planned outage, yes, it should be included in that.
Okay, thank you.
Tom, you and I talked about this, especially when we were dealing with the long-term care facilities and the work that I do in California with the nursing homes there. PSPS is a reality. And some of our members, long-term care providers like John Scott and others, were like, they couldn't believe that at a hospital, that at a fire station, that at a assisted living community, they're going to shut the power off at PG&E. And I've got clients that I work with that sometimes are without power for 10 days when the threat up in Chino or wherever is imminent. What's our reality in metro areas? I mean, John Scott, Fellowship Square, Brown and Power Road, will he ever be subjected to a PSPS? Are we talking Yavapai County or some of the more high country areas?
So for SRP, we just have those two distribution areas that I talked about. So Tonto Basin and Roosevelt down in that area, northeast of here. So that's the area that we're looking at. Also in Rio Verde is the other area that we're looking at, and working with the Maricopa County Department of Emergency Management to make sure that there's a response plan in place for Rio Verde, so all of the population out there can have a cooling center, a place to go. But fortunately for us, there's no critical infrastructure or hospitals or anything like that in the areas. APS, on the other hand, I believe does have some. I'm not quite sure what that is, so I can't speak to that, but I believe they do have some critical facilities. But yes, and I know Nevada also does public safety power shutoffs, and I know they've been out for weeks at a time. So yeah, it can occur.
How about other